Hello everyone and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else that I want to as I try to drag my mental health back out of the gutter. That said, today we're looking at the legendary creatures from Assassin's Creed. To put it into context, Assassin's Creed has 309 cards total, and of that, 37 are legendary creatures. There are other legendary artifacts and stuff, but we're not going to touch on those. And I'm just going to kind of file through them real fast in WUBRG order, and I'll spend a little more time on the ones that I find actually interesting. So, first up in WUBRG order, we have Lila Hassan. 3 and a white, 3/4. Human Assassin. First strike, whenever she enters the battlefield, or whenever one or more assassins you control deal combat damage to a player, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. Interesting? Yes. Do I see her as a commander? Not really. So, moving on, we have next up Senu, Keen-Eyed Protector. 1 and a white for a 2/1 bird scout with flying and vigilance, and you can tap and exile Senu. You gain 2 life and scry 2. Whenever a legendary creature you control attacks and isn't blocked, if Senu is exiled, put it onto the battlefield attacking. Not tapped and attacking, but attacking. Now this one, I really like the design of. Again, I don't know if I would run this as a commander, but maybe in a white-blue flyers list. It could be interesting. Moving on, the next one we're going to come across is in blue, and that is Evie Fry. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human assassin. She partners with her brother Jacob, and you can pay 1, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a creature card this way, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. It's fun. I'll give it that. There is the partnership with her brother, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But I don't really see what I would do with them as commanders right now. So moving on, we have our Leonardo da Vinci for 2 and a blue. He is a 3/3 human artificer. For 3 blue, until end of turn, Thopters you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And you can pay 2 and a blue and tap to draw a card, then discard a card. If you discarded a card that was an artifact, exile it from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 0/2 Thopter artifact creature with flying in addition to its other types. Mono blue artifacts has been a thing for a long time. Next we move into black, and first up there we have Desmond Miles. 1 and a black for a 1/3 human assassin with the Menace. He gets +1/+0 for each other assassin you control and each assassin card in your graveyard. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you surveil X, where X is the amount of damage it dealt to that player. I think this could be a fun, really stupid Voltron list. But that said, next up we have Ezio Auditore de Firenze. 1 and a black for a 3/2 human assassin with Menace. Assassin spells you cast have free running black, and that's you can cast it for that as long as you've dealt damage with either your commander or an assassin. And then whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you can pay WUBRG, and if that player has 10 or less life, that player loses the game. So this is the one that I think is going to be the one that everybody scrambles to build from the set, and it is the one that I'm the most interested in building because I enjoy Typal decks. I just don't know if I need another 5-color deck right now. So, moving on to Jacob Fry. This is the partner of Evie Fry. For 2 and a black, is a 3/2 human assassin. Whenever one or more assassins you control deal combat damage to a player, exile up to one target assassin card or a card with free running from your graveyard. If you do copy it, you can cast a copy. So I see how they work together. You draw a card, you discard it with Eevee, then when you hit somebody, you get to exile that card and then make a copy of it. I still don't really see me doing that. Next up is still in black is Roshan, Hidden Magister. 3 and a black for a 4/4 human assassin. Other creatures you control are assassins in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Face down creatures you control have menace, and whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you draw a card and you lose a life. So this is playing into the disguise assassins that are in the set, and I just realized he makes all your disguised things assassins. That's actually pretty cool. But that's it. That moves us out of black and finally into red, starting off with Alexios, Deimos of Cosmos. 3 and a red for a 4/4 human berserker with trample. Alexios attacks each combat if able, can't be sacrificed, and can't attack its owner. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps it, puts a +1/+1 counter on it, it gains haste until end of turn. This is the one that I think... there's that Splicer that kind of does this, and this is just a new way to do that. And I have seen some interesting builds already pop up online for this, even though they're basically just Splicer decks. Anywho, moving on. Our other red one here is Searcher, Fiery Jotun. 3 red for a 5/5 giant god warrior. It has trample, and whenever you cast a historic spell, Searcher, Fiery Jotun deals 3 damage to any target. So back to Layla real quick. I've noticed either the Boros and the Naya specifically really cares about historic cards. That's it. That's all I got on that. That puts us into green with Eveline de Grandpré. I hope I said that right. 2 green for a 3/3 human assassin, Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on that creature, and it has Disguise for black-green. The one thing I was a little disappointed with is the Disguise cost, putting black into this equation, because I have Finn the Fangbearer, and I really love that deck, and she would be amazing in that deck. But now if I want to put her in that deck, I have to make her the commander. I don't know. And that does end all of the mono-colored, even if they have more than one color in their identity, cards. And now we move into the multicolored stuff. First up, we have Haytham Kenway. 2, a white and a blue, for a 3/3 human knight. He has protection from assassins. Other knights you control get +2/+2 and have protection from assassins. When Haytham Kenway enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to one target creature that player controls until Haytham Kenway leaves the battlefield. That does a lot. I could see a white-blue knight build, but there's also the, what's his name? Saidar? Jabari? I don't know. The, Esper Knights commander deck that came out with, I believe it was March of the Machine. And he would just be amazing in there. But also in these colors, we have a Socrates, Athenian Teacher. 1, a white and a blue for a 0/4 human advisor. He has Defender. He has Hexproof as long as it's untapped. And then he has an ability called Socratic Dialogue. You can tap him. Until end of turn, target creature gains if this creature would deal combat damage to a player. Prevent that damage. That creature's controller and that player each draw half that many cards rounded down. So, yeah, I could see interesting things with him. Next up, we have our Dimir colors, and that starts with Achilles Davenport. For 2, a blue and a black, you get a 3/3 human assassin with free running for blue and a black. He has Menache, and other assassins you control get +1/+1. So, he's your assassin lord. Next up, we have Edwale, Breaker of Chains. 1, a blue and a black for a 4/1 human pirate assassin. When Edwale enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library, put an assassin, pirate, or vehicle card from among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, you may return Edwale from your graveyard to your hand. He seems fun, but again, I don't really see him as the commander of a deck, and that's really all we're gonna say on it. Next up, we have Basim ibn Ishaq. I hope I'm saying that one right. For a blue and a black, we get a 2/2 human assassin. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card, and then he can't be blocked this turn. This ability triggers only once per turn. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. That's pretty sweet and simple, and I, again, feel like he would be a 99er, not a commander in my case. Right, we have 2 more in Dimir. The first one being Ezio, Blade of Vengeance. 3, a blue and a black for a 5/5 human assassin with Death Touch. Whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And Lydia Fry for 2, and then a hybrid Dimir. You get a 3/2 human assassin. She can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. At the beginning of your end step, you surveil X, where X is the number of tapped assassins you control. So, as far as Ezio goes, another great 99er in an assassin's list. I guess you could run him as the commander, but why, in this case, would you keep yourself to 2 colors when there's so many others? Lydia, on the other hand, I could see an interesting build with her where you're just trying to, like, spam out assassin tokens, and then you make her huge, and then she just can only be chump blocked by things with, 2 power and less. But that puts us into Rakdos, starting with Arno Dorian. 2, red, black, for a 3/3 human assassin with Death Touch. Other assassins you control get +2/+0, and Disguise for a red and a black. Again, I like this. It's another assassin lord. I just think it's the same as everything else. You have a 5-color option, and you're just limiting yourself if you don't go with it. That is the only one in that color, and next up we have one in Orzhov, and that's Shay Cormac. He's a 1/1 for a white and a black. He is a human knight rogue. You can pay 1, and permanents your opponents control lose hexproof, indestructible, protection, shroud, and ward until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of spell or ability you control, put a bounty counter on that creature. Whenever a creature with a bounty counter on it dies, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Shay Cormac. This is interesting. I could actually see building this one. Mostly just to mess with people and get rid of ward and hexproof and stuff. And then you just start throwing not even removal spells, just things that target. Because if it's a removal spell, then sure, you get an immediate buff. But if it's just something that throws a counter on them, something like, I don't know. anything, really. But moving along, because we're already running long here, that puts us into Izzet with Mary Reed and Anne Bonny. 1, a blue and a red for a 3/3 human assassin pirate with haste. Tap, draw a card, discard a card. Whenever you discard an island, pirate, or vehicle card, create a tapped treasure token. I like the design here for caring about what you discard and then also making them a looter with haste. But that's really all I gotta say about them. The other one in this color is Xiao Jun, which is 1, a blue and a red for a 3/3 human assassin. She has 2 abilities. Leap Strike. As long as it's your turn, she has flying and first strike. Rope Dart. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and she deals 1 damage to each opponent. I've seen people looking to build this as spamming out, like, treasures and stuff. And I've seen other people that are like, well, she has flying and first strike on your turn. Just slap a sword on her and go to town. And they are both viable options. Next up, we have our Golgari Queen, literally, because that is Cleopatra, Exiled Pharaoh. For 2, a black and a green, you get a 2/4 human noble. She has 2 abilities, allies. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target legendary creatures, and Betrayal. Whenever a legendary creature you control with counters on it dies, draw a card for each counter on it, you lose 2 life. So, yeah. She cares about legendary creatures. That's a 99 thing, if you ask me, because there's other things with more colors that also care about legendary creatures. And that pushes us into Boros. And we have several Boros commanders. The first one up is Arbaz Mir, which is a red and a white for a 2/2 human assassin. Whenever he or another non-token historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, he deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Again, the whole Boros and Naya thing, caring about historic permanents. Next up, we have Aya of Alexandria, 2, a red and a white for a 4/3 human assassin with Menashe and lifelink. Whenever a historic creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Menashe. So I like that it specifies a historic creature there, because if it just had a legendary creature, that would limit it. But with it saying historic creature, that means artifact creatures also will trigger this. I don't hate this design. I just wish it had partner with Bayek of Siwa, considering that's her husband. But that said, Bayek of Siwa is 3, a red and a white for a 3/4 human assassin with double strike. As long as it's your turn, other historic creatures you control have double strike, and he has disguise for 1, a red and a white. So again, I don't hate that design, because like legendaries getting double strike, great. I do just wish they had partners with each other, for the lore. But we have several more Boros legendaries to look at. First up is Evior Battle Ready. For 3, a red and a white, you get a 5/5 human assassin warrior with vigilance and haste. And whenever Evior attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of equipment you control to each opponent. Yes, this is powerful, but I am also kind of burned out on Boros commanders being good with equipment. We get it. It's enough. But sadly, it won't be the last one. But next up, we have Ezio Brash Novice for 1 and a hybrid Boros. You get a 1/1 human. Whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on him. As long as Ezio has 2 or more counters on it, it has First Strike and is an assassin in addition to its other types. This is a really simple, easy, like, you just put him down and turn him sideways. And I like decks like that sometimes. But moving right along because, again, there's more. Next up we have Cassandra the Eagle Bearer for 1, a red and a white. You get a 2/2 human assassin warrior with haste. When she enters the battlefield, you can search your graveyard, hand, and library for the Spear of Leonidas and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And then whenever a creature you control with a legendary equipment attached to it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. The Spear is in the red cards, but we're not going to go over that. I do like the design of actually giving like additional card draw to stuff, but again, it is another Boros commander that cares about equipment. That is the end of the dual colored. Next up we have our 3 colored, and I know I'm gonna mess up this name. So I'm just gonna try my best. Retinaketon? I hope that's even close to correct. But he is Esper for a white, a blue, and a black. You get a 3/3 human assassin. As long as he hasn't dealt damage yet, he has hexproof and can't be blocked. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with menace. When you do, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield and then attach it to it. See, this one, I don't care that it has an equipment clause attached to it because it's not Boros. It's Esper. So, just moving along. Next up, we have Edward Kenway for 2 and Grixis, so blue, black, red. We get a 5/5 human assassin pirate. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each tapped assassin, pirate, and or vehicle you control. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library, then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. I like the design here. I like that it gives us more pirates for Adwale stuff, and again, cares about vehicles. So I could see interesting builds, but moving right along. First up in Naya, we have Evior Wolf-Kissed for 3 and red, green, white. You get a 7/6 human assassin warrior with trample and haste. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. You may put a saga card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. So, not necessarily caring about the historic stuff, but sagas are historic. Next up, we have Javi the Allfather for 3 and Naya, so red, green, white. You get a 6/6 God Warrior. Javi the Allfather has indestructible as long as there are 4 or more historic cards in your graveyard. And he has an ability called Sage Project. Whenever Javi or another legendary creature you control dies, return target legendary creature with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, again, caring about historic stuff. And finally, in this color, we have Sigurd, Jarl of Ravensthorpe. For Naya, so red, green, white, we have a 3/3 human warrior with vigilance, trample, and lifelink. It also has boast. For 1, put a lore counter on target saga you control, or remove one from it. And then it says whenever you put a lore counter on a saga you control, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 other target creature. I like the design here. Again, historic stuff, but I'm running long, so we're moving on. Next up, we have Bant with Sean and Rebecca, agents for 1, a green, a white, and a blue. We have a 4/4 human assassin scientist with vigilance. Whenever they enter the battlefield, you search your graveyard, hand, and library for a card named the Animus, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle, and you can tap them to add colorless. When you do, you mill 2 cards. Interesting theories can be made. I'm moving on. Next up, we have our final multicolored commander with Altair Ibn Lahad for a red, a white, and a black in Mardu. He is a 3/3 human assassin with first strike. Whenever he attacks, exile up to 1 target assassin creature card from your graveyard with a memory counter on it. Then for each creature card you own in exile with a memory counter on it, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. Yeah, it's cool. But there is one last legendary creature to talk about. And that is the Capitoline Triad? The Capitoline Triad. For 10, it's not colorless, but 10 generic mana, you get a 7/7 God Artificer with the ability Those Who Came Before. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each historic card in your graveyard. And you can exile any number of historic cards from your graveyard with total mana value 30 or greater, and you get an emblem with creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. That is honestly kind of sweet, but I really don't want to spend any more time on this because we're approaching the half an hour mark, and that's typically where I put a hard cutoff on things because I don't like to take up too much of your time. Nobody needs to hear me screaming into the void this much. That said, lots of interesting cards. I will not be buying sealed product. I will only be buying singles, and that's when I'm not shoveling money into my car. So that said, have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.